Hello and welcome to today's webinar that is on the topic Rejection of Manuscript, its possible reasons and solutions. My name is Swati. I'm the presenter of today's webinar, and we also have with us Dr. Kuldeep, who will be answering all your queries after the webinar is done. I request all of you to keep your mic in mute mode, and after the webinar is done, you can unmute yourself and ask all your queries related to the webinar. And one more thing is, kindly give your full name when you're asking a question or a doubt, because also we'll be giving the webinar certificate after the webinar is done. So without wasting much of the time, let's jump right into the presentation. So the topics that we'll be covering today is review process, common reasons of rejection, handling rejection, and resubmission of the revised manuscript. Okay, so let's say you have finished the process of writing a scientific paper by following all the steps like selecting a journal matching your scope, formatting, editing according to the journal's guidelines, and finally submitting. Now, what happens is your paper goes through a peer review process. Now, what is a peer review process? It is the process used to assess the quality of a manuscript before it is published. Independent researchers in the relevant research area assess submitted manuscripts for originality, validity, and significance to help editors determine whether a manuscript should be published in their journal. Now, peer review are of two types. First is single blind peer review, and second is double blind peer review. In single blind peer review, the reviewers are aware of the names and affiliations of the paper's authors. And in double blind peer review, both the reviewer and the author identities are concealed from the reviewers and vice versa. Now, here what you see is a complete process of review before a paper is accepted for publication. So, once you complete your research, you prepare the manuscript, submit it, and then it goes to what I discussed earlier, that is the peer review process. So, once the review is done, there are two kinds of decisions that are taken by the reviewers. First is, either the reviewer can ask you to revise your manuscript and resubmit again, after which again there is the re-review decision. And after the re-review decision, again there is a decision, either the paper is accepted for publication or rejected. And the second kind of decision is complete rejection. Now, what are the common reasons for rejection? First is lack of originality, novelty, or significance. Novelty and unobviousness are the primary criteria that an editor of a scientific journal stresses upon the most. For example, a mouth-dissolving tablet preparation of a drug with conventional methods, technology, and/or known excipients presents no novelty to the existing state of the field unless the researcher demonstrates something new, adding to the existing knowledge. Also, there is little or no scientific value in presenting an obsolete study when newer methods are already available. The next reason can be poor experimental design and/or inadequate investigation. Poor hypothesis, study design, methodology, and improper use of statistics are few other reasons for rejection of manuscript. Involving colleagues more conversant with the concepts of study design, methodology, and statistics during the conception phase of the study can avoid this problem. Moreover, in this era of evidence-based, authors must endeavor to produce high-level evidence articles. Doing a retrospective case series or comparative study on a topic where a robust randomized control trial has already been done is not a good idea. Similarly, studies with small sample size, short follow-up, or retrospective designs have a high chance of rejections. Case reports are only accepted if they have a clear new message. Next is failure to conform to the targeted journal. Every journal has a well-defined mandate and target audience. Authors must ensure that they submit to a journal within the scope of which their manuscript lies. Manuscripts outside the scope are usually rejected without an external peer review. The other traditional approach is to carefully scrutinize the websites of the journal to understand its scope and go through the previous issues of the journal to understand the type of the article the journal usually accepts. Next reason is poor use of language, grammar, and spelling. This can also be an important reason for a technical modification, revision, or rejection. One must proofread one's own manuscript multiple times before submitting it to a journal. Authors whose native language is not English must take the help of their colleagues or other native English speakers to improve the language quality of their manuscripts. However, if the message of the paper is not clear because of poor language and the authors do not improve it even after multiple requests, the editor has to sometimes reject such manuscripts. Next is insufficient problem statement. Publications in peer-reviewed journals are to disseminate knowledge. Therefore, for a manuscript to be published in a well-recognized international journal, it must have significant value. Again, the editor is in search of something that is new and at the same time fulfills the requirements of the scope of his or her journal. The next reason is methods not described in detail. Your study design, the apparatus used, and procedures followed must be made clear. Some manuscripts reflect improper methodology of the work done in the research study. This is attributed to the poor literature survey before starting the work, demonstrating the paltry knowledge of the researcher. If the methodology of a study is flawed or questionable, the result is also bound to be flawed or questionable, and many highly rated peer-reviewed journals will not accept such a study. Next is over-interpretation of results. Some reviewers have indicated that a clear and honest approach to the interpretation of the results is likely to increase the chances of a manuscript being accepted. So identify possible biases and confounding variables both during the design phase of the study and the interpretation of the results, and describe your experimental results concisely. Next is inappropriate or incomplete statistics. Application of statistics in the methodology and results section of a manuscript creates an extra edge over the others. statistics being the need of the moment. Precisely showing the results with application of statistical principles will increase the probability of acceptance of the manuscript. Use an appropriate test and do not make the statistics too complicated. Next is unsatisfactory or confusing presentation of data in tables or figures. Whenever you are putting your tables and figures in the manuscript, try to make it as easy as possible to read, because some editors start looking directly at the tables, graphs, and figures to determine if the manuscript is worth considering. Next is conclusions not supported by data. Make sure your conclusions are not overstated, are supported, and answer the study's questions. Be sure to provide alternative explanations and do not simply restate the results. Next is incomplete, inaccurate, or outdated review of the literature. List only the references that are relevant to your study. The reviewers of your manuscripts will be experts in the field and will be aware of all the pertinent research that is being conducted. Next is author unwilling to revise the manuscript to address the reviewer's suggestions. Remember, when a reviewer is putting their suggestion and asking you to revise your manuscript, it means the reviewer has seen that there is a scope of improvement in your paper. So take the reviewer suggestions into account when revising your manuscript, because it will always result in a more better and improved manuscript. And also the chances of your manuscript being published will be high. Next is lacking author's information. Sometimes giving incomplete address, like the full name of author is absent, or affiliation is not present, or the postal address, telephone, or email is absent. Sometimes this also leads to rejection of the manuscript. Next is incomplete manuscript. Your article may contain observations, but might not be a full study, or it discusses findings in relation to some of the work in the field, but ignores other important work. The next reason is it's simply a small extension of a different paper, often from the same authors, where the findings are incremental and do not advance the field, or the work is clearly part of a larger study chopped up to make as many articles. Next reason could be plagiarism or unoriginal text. And the next and the last one is reviewer's field of knowledge and discretion. Sometimes, as an oversight, the manuscript may be sent to a reviewer who may not be an expert in the field of the subject under review, and he may give a casual glance to the manuscript, deciding its eventual fate. In such cases, it is believed that there are more chances of the manuscript being accepted. However, the reverse can also happen. Although in reputed international journals, the editor-in-chief certainly consults another reviewer if the comments from one or two of them do not appear to be an outcome of critical evaluation. The next reason is the editor-in-chief is looking for something specific at a particular time. Sometimes a particular research area is emphasized upon at a particular time based on its present need and importance, as also on its usefulness and potential in the future or theme issue. And the next is low acceptance rate. If your submitting journal has a high impact factor, probably it will have a low acceptance rate. Acceptance rate surely does play a deciding role in publication. However, all depends on your paper's uniqueness and novelty. These are a few examples of the manuscript being rejected. So the next question that comes to mind is it the end of the world for the manuscript? Obviously not. Realize there are many other reasons for rejection. Do not be disappointed and do not take it personally, because an unknown person reads your manuscript and makes a judgment based on certain well-established criteria. So respect his comments and be mature enough to understand the comments, whether they are genuinely written or have been written just for the sake of writing. Energize yourself, read your article again and again, and ask yourself if it could be improved in any way, along with the comments of any of the reviewers. Authors have to become their own best editor, best critic, and strongest supporter. Read your article with a questioning mind to see if it strolls off the subject at some point or states a problem which it does not solve or repeats the same point several times. Ask your competitor or peer group having the knowledge of the subject matter to read it, giving additional comments. One may rewrite a part or may improve it by doing some more research to try and find a better match. Based on the reviewer's comments, improve upon the manuscript and send it to the same journal again. If one journal rejects your article, try another and another one and yet another one. Now, handling rejections. Getting a rejection letter from a journal is one of the most disconcerting experiences for any author. Statistical evidence suggests all authors, including the most experienced ones, face rejection even at matured stages of their careers. There is evidence that a rejection from one journal is not the end of the road for the author or even for that particular manuscript. However, there is no denying that the fact that a rejection letter hurts a lot. So, how does one deal with it? The first point is take a step back. Accepting rejection is particularly hard at the beginning of one's career. You may look back on all the effort put into writing, editing, and formatting the paper and consider that all that as a complete waste of time. However, these are initial reactions that are normal and hence allow them to phase out. Once you have read the review, put it away for several days, because what seems shocking and rude on the first day starts to look more manageable by the third day. The next point is understand why it was rejected. The review letter will have clear answers to your primary question, that is, why was it rejected? Now, poor language is an extremely common reason for manuscript rejection, along with formatting issues.
Hello. يا ريس.
Many journal editors reject an article at the initial stage because of other factors such as multiple articles on similar lines or topics, etc. If your manuscript was sent for peer review, it means the set of challenges are quite different. Read the reviewer comments carefully and try to understand where exactly the challenge lies, whether it is in methodology section, in the main argument, in the presentation of academic evidence, or a lacuna in rigor. A revise and submit may be as bad as a rejection, but it also leaves enough scope to work on the next round. Contrary to initial feeling, you actually have multiple options before you abandon the paper, send the paper without a single change to another journal, revise the manuscript and send it to another journal, or protest or appeal the decision and try to resubmit the paper to the rejecting journal. While the initial reaction may be towards options 1 and 4, it is really the options 2 and 3, that is, send the paper without a single change to another journal and revise the manuscript and send it to another journal, that makes more sense. However, all 4 options are equally valid, and what you decide to do must be based on sound reasoning. So even though it may sound ironic, it is better to be prepared for rejection even at the time of drafting the manuscript for journal publication. Some prepare to send it to multiple journals from the onset. Some look forward to peer review under rejection only to polish the manuscript for a better journal. Many authors have experience of the same paper being rejected multiple times before it was finally published. So remember, rejection is just another stepping stone for an academic career. Now, next is responding to reviewers. Reviewers' comments should be taken positively as it provides a scope for improvement. Now, coming to the type of revision, revisions can be minor or major. Whatever may be the case, it needs to be addressed. Sometimes, reviewers write revisions that may span many pages and still are termed as minor. Whether minor or major, comments or revisions are often very error-free and informative. They are very clear with no possibility of doubts. Next is arranging the comments. Comments are sometimes not in form of a list and are retained within the text. In such a case, the comments should be sorted down and incorporated in a tabular format. The tables should have details of comments and also the responses that has been given. All minor comments like spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, style, and font should be addressed first. By dealing with these minor issues, you will realize that maximum comments are being sorted out as we make errors while we write. Prepare your responses carefully. Sometimes the reviewer can also be wrong. Be tactful and enthusiastic and always thank the reviewers. Do not respond to the reviewers with an upset or angry mind. Get help from other authors. Never telephone the editor, and always be optimistic that your efforts will be recognized and result in a successful publication. Next is point-by-point approach. It is the most important part of the resubmission. This should always be the first thing to be prepared. It should start by thanking the reviewers for their time spent on the review and the insightful constructive comments which are going to improve the manuscript. Then add a short summary of your key changes. The key part would be a specific dialogue type list of comments and responses. For any changes, the authors should indicate the location, that is page and paragraph numbers, in the new version of manuscript file. And for any defenses, try best to be polite and write professionally. That is, convert the reviewers or editor's comments into a series of clear points and questions, and answer to each query directly below it. And in doing this, do not edit the unwanted comments or questions. Now below you can see an example of point-by-point response where a reviewer has given a comment that in your analysis of the data that you have chosen to use a somewhat obscure fitting function, and in my opinion, a simple Gaussian function would have sufficed. Moreover, the results would be more instructive and easier to compare to previous results. So to this, the perfect response is, first, you agree with the reviewer comments by writing that we agree with the reviewer that a simple Gaussian fit would facilitate comparison with the results of other studies. Then you put forward your opinion in such a way that it won't appear rude or any other way. Like, however, a tailored function allows for the analysis of the data in terms of the Smith model. And then you can write what you did to address the comment. Like here it is written, we have added 2 sentences to the manuscript in page 3 and line 4 to justify the use of this function and Smith's model. So whenever you are giving a response to any reviewer's comments, make sure to be polite and thank the reviewer and put forward your own opinion in a polite way. Now, after you have addressed all the comments and modified or revised the manuscript, now it's time to resubmit your revised manuscript. So while the resubmission, provide the rebuttal letter, provide response to reviewers and editors, give an unmarked version of your revised paper, along with a marked version of your revised paper, highlighting all the changes, provide all source files for artwork, and the specific instructions and resubmit to the same or different journal. Now, remember, every journal policy is slightly different. Manuscript revision is a sensitive and delicate game, and play the game well and you will succeed. Now, this is an image which shows what a peer review does to your paper. The car is depicted as the manuscript, and after peer review and revision, the following points are the modifications done by the author by taking into account the reviewer's suggestions so that it becomes more deserving and acceptable and ultimately ready to get published. Now, in today's webinar, we learned about the flow of review process, reasons of rejection of paper, ways to handle rejection, and resubmission of revised manuscript. So thank you everybody for attending our webinar. And one more important thing I would like to announce is, these are 2 offers that we are currently providing. So refer our services and get a discount coupon of $50, which is valid till end of this month, that is July 2022, on minimum order value of $300. And another offer is for all the webinar attendees that you will be getting a discounted premium package of $550. So thank you again for attending the webinar. We hope you found it useful, and we can now start our question and answer round. So whoever has any query can unmute yourself and ask Dr. Kuldeep. Dr. Kuldeep, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So we can take on the question then.
Sure, sure.
We have one question in the chat box. This is from Shahid. He's asking, after resubmission, how much is the chance for rejection or acceptance of manuscripts?
That actually entirely depends upon the journal and the type of revisions the reviewers have asked you for. For example, if it is related to a methodological flaw, a reviewer has pointed out, okay, your samples, for example, a reviewer has pointed out that your sample size is less. For example, you have used only 50 cases and 50 controls, and the reviewer has a problem in that. And that again depends upon how you have justified that sample size, or have you how you have justified that flaw in your methodology. Have you increased the sample size and have conducted the results again, experiments again, and have included the revised results in the manuscript, or you have justified the sample size, like you have responded saying that I have used a sample size calculator and we found that the sample size is 50. So it all depends upon the type of comment the reviewer has raised and how you have responded to that comment, giving due respect to the reviewer.
But sir, how much will be the chance if we
No,
take
there is no such I mean statistically calculated value or percentage we can say that okay, this is the percentage of acceptance, but mostly it depends upon the type of comments you have received.
Okay. Anybody else wants to ask the question? You can unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, ma'am. This is Dr. Kamran. Thanks for your this kind lecture. My concern is that why most of journal, if somebody submitted the review manuscript, why they send it to, not to same reviewers, and mostly time they change the reviewers. It's the journal policies, or because if now it goes to new reviewers, they sometimes they will put new edition as well. So what is the what is your comments about this? My concern.
Well, Dr. Kamran, this is a very nice question. So let us discuss this thing. So sometimes what happens is that since the scientific community is very small, so we are all associated with each other, and this is called a peer review process. So sometimes what happens is that the manuscript goes to a reviewer, which is sometimes what happens is that the journal asks you to suggest a few reviewers, and you suggested the reviewers, reviewer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it went to the reviewers that you suggested. And since that reviewer is a member of the society that you belong to, or you have some collaboration with the reviewer sometimes puts very gentle comments without critically analyzing the manuscript. So when that is the scenario, the editor comes to know. So depending upon the type of comments, the type of the depth of the and critical analysis that the reviewer has done while putting comments on your manuscript, the editor decides to go for a different reviewer or not. Mostly what happens is that when you submit a rebuttal letter and respond to the reviewers, 90% of the times it goes to the same reviewer who has raised the comments. But sometimes what happens is that if the reviewers are not able to provide some critical analysis on your manuscript, the editor decides to give it to a different reviewer, and then the reviewer belonging to the area of the study that manuscript is depicting. And in that case, the expert is related to the field and is able to provide specific comments related to your study. Am I clear, Dr. Kamran?
Yes, thank you very much. And my concern, why we have to provide, it becomes sometimes biased that you are providing that I know like Pradeep or Anu or somebody there, and we are giving their, because it's like a marketing, you providing somebody reference and they are sending their reviews. So I think, so why the journals, they put this is compulsory to submit your two reviewers. So why it should be like this one? There should be like a equality. You submit, and it's the job of the journal. They should find some more people to scrutinize your manuscript. So from your beginning, you have ambitions that I will submit to Mr. Asfar, and like this one, these are 5 people, 2 people. You are giving the reference, and from the beginning of your study, you have they unintentionally or intentionally they give you a favor, and ultimately you are end up sometimes good publication, but unfortunately if they are not in your favor, so it will be a problem. So there should be some globally like same principle for our journal. This is my opinion or something like this.
So Dr. Kamran, here we can just think this thing in 2 directions. The first thing is that journals sometimes ask you to provide a list of reviewers, and you give 4 or 5 names, but it is not always likely that the journal is going to send your paper to those reviewers only. The journals always try to look for reviewers in your field. If the journal does not find a reviewer related to your field, then they go to the suggested reviewers, but they do not go always to the suggested reviewers. Okay. And the second thing is that there is one option when you submit your manuscript in a journal. There is always one option to list out the scientists or the researchers to whom you do not want your paper to go for a review. So that is yes, opposed reviewers. So you can always oppose someone if you do not want him to review your papers. For example, if there is some conflict of interest issue, or you are doing an overlapping research with that, you are doing a research which is overlapping with the field of interest of somebody else's work, then in those cases you can always give the names of those fellows to which the journal will not send your paper for review. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Hassan, is it clear?
Yes.
Sorry,
Okay, sir. Thank you. Anybody else wants to ask any question?
Hello.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Yes, I would like to comment on why the editor change sometimes the reviewer. Actually, there is several reasons. Some reviewer don't read the manuscript and accept without any reading, without checking the manuscript. Some reviewer reject the manuscript without also checking the manuscript. Sometimes reviewer is not specialized well in the topic of the manuscript and give comments which is not logically. Actually, there is many reasons, so we have to send the paper or the manuscript to other reviewer.
Yes, you are right. You're right. Sometimes what happens is that if you are working on radiology and your paper is going to a person who is working, who is not related to radiology, so he doesn't understand the paper and give a comment at all, and he accepts the manuscript as such. So in those cases, what happens is that the editor decides to send it to some other guy who is a specialist in radiology, so that we can seek specific comments on the manuscript. Yes, this happens. Yes. Any more questions? Swati, do we have any more questions?
Yes, sir. There's a person who's raising hand. Maha Yunis, you can unmute yourself and ask whatever question you have.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
yes, audible. Hi.
Yes, thank you for this informative lecture. Actually, it's a very important questions. And you know, I work and live in Iraq, so it's a self-teaching. I learn from a trial and error, and I have faced rejection so many times, and I have succeeded in publishing. My question is, I have wrote it down. I faced some reviewer comment, which was really political disagreement rather than discussing the scientific content or the scientific solidarity of the paper. For example, I published a paper recently in January about ECT practice in Iraq, and it was banned by the decision from England, Royal College Subcommittee. So I wrote and I submit my paper to the International Journal of the Royal College, and it was rejected. And the comment was that you are wrong, and this banning or stopping or discontinuing a plain ACT. You know, we are living in a third world country where GA is not general anesthesia is not always feasible, and it's not always available. And you are dealing with acute or serious or emergency cases. We have sometimes, and when I was training in the 80s and the 90s, because of the economical sanction on Iraq and the severe shortage of anesthesia, we used to practice plain ECT with diazepam IV. So the reviewer comment was shaming and criticizing rather than discussing the content. And I submitted my paper with some editing to another journal, and it was accepted. So do you think it has something to do with it, a political or whatever you call it? I don't know. I like to hear your opinion about this.
I think in this case, you have to communicate with the editor and complain against the reviewer, telling this story to the editor. Then the editor in this case can change the reviewer and send the paper to another reviewer or can cancel the reviewer. This is my opinion. But let us see the manuscript people, what are they saying.
I mean, do you think we are living in a country, you know, with wars and conflicts and American invasion, and there are so many foreign interference and so on. So do you think the nationality of the reviewer matters in this case, or his or her political attitudes? Do you think it has something to do with the rejection?
Okay, let me give my opinion on this. So sometimes what happens is that your paper goes to an individual who is very opinionated, who is very, sometimes religious or sometimes political, and he is giving you very vague comments, like the comment you received in your previous submissions. So the best way that we already have discussed in our presentation today is that the best way is to politely answer, politely respond to the comment, saying that, okay, we agree to your state of mind, or we agree to the suggestion that you have provided in your comment. However, we believe that, or however, the circumstances were like that we use these things. So this is the best way to respond to the comment. And the second best thing is that you change the journal itself. So it is always good to avoid such people, journals or such reviewers, because I'm repeating this, the scientific community is a very close-knit community. So we cannot, disrespect, or we cannot disagree to a reviewer, straightforwardly. We should be always polite in our response, even if the comment is a negative one. So yes, the nationality sometimes affects, but again, this peer review process has got its limitations. So this peer, if you have done a research for 5 years and you have put down your research in a 3,500 word paper, and it is going to a person, a single individual, and that single individual is giving his opinion on your paper. So that is not the end of the world, as we said in our presentation today. So we should not, completely believe on the comments that the reviewer has suggested. We have all the rights to deny, to respond, or we have always got the right to deny any further revisions, and we can change the journal, which you did, and you succeeded also. You got it published.
If I can
Thank
just
you.
make a comment, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Can I just
Yes.
make a comment? Yeah.
Yeah.
Having been an editor for a long time, there are various reasons why papers do get rejected. And as an author, you've got to remember that no two reviewers are the same, both in terms of experience in a subject area or in terms of academic review of manuscripts. There is no guarantee that no matter how very good a paper is, that it will be accepted by the very first journal that you send it to. Yes. In my over 20 years experience as an editor, I've never seen an instance where a paper was rejected purely because of the country it was submitted from. That is, it wasn't based on any political considerations. Most reviewers will look at the science behind the manuscript and decide as an individual reviewer whether it's something that's acceptable, requires minor review, or a major review. But in my experience, not on the basis of political considerations. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you totally. And I mean, we are we deal with science. We don't want to be suspicious or paranoid, but I just want to be sure of your opinion and to hear your opinion about that because of my experience, you know. Thank you very much.
Let me cite one thing which will soothe you down. Even Einstein's paper was once rejected. The theory of relativity was also not published at one go. So if Einstein's paper can be rejected, so any other's paper can be rejected. So as I said earlier, that the reviewer's comment is an individual person's comment only.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Safia, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, good evening.
My question is, there are so many predatory journals, and if it happens that one of them publishes a part of the manuscript without permission, and even after you send them repeated email, they don't retract it, then is there anything the author has to do, or just leave that matter?
You can always report it. You can always report it. You can always report the journal. So
like where do you actually report the journal? Because I saw there are some registries which have a collection of the predatory journal. They have journal names. So those journals are available in those registries, just like a warning. But where does the author have to report it?
I mean, you can directly write to the publisher, because every journal has a publisher.
Okay.
So you can write to the publisher. If it is a Springer, or it is a, Springer is not, it is very rarely that a journal which is predatory comes under Springer, but I'm just giving an example. You can just write to the publisher directly.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
And you have all the rights to retract it, and you have all the rights to sue the journal. You can even sue the journal.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for your opinion.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Safia. Any more questions?
Hello, are you going to make the recording available?
Swati, I think this is for you. The doctor is asking if this recording is available for them for today's presentation.
So the recording won't be shareable, but we can share the PPT.
Okay, either way, if we can have it sent by the WhatsApp group.
Yes, yes, we'll share it with you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I guess then we can wrap it up. We don't have any more questions.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.